What impact does the Supreme Court's ruling in the Ripple case last week have? What are your thoughts on regulating digital assets? Does it necessitate federal legislation to specify the regulatory supervision of this industry? Consider our purpose of investor protection. The focus on capital formation and middle markets remains the same. According to Gary Gensler, the decision was reached just a few days ago. This decision excited us, and we knew how critical it was to protect institutional investors. Furthermore, we were dissatisfied with the court's actions on fair notice, despite their concerns about retail investors. We are actively investigating and assessing them. Viewpoint Gary Gensler has recently remarked on current developments in the Ripple SEC inquiry. You may also have noticed that he refers to it as the judge's view. In this video, I'd want to explain something. Whether or not this changes my opinion of Gary Gensler. I am appealing this case since I am unsure how that will happen and whether it would ruin XRP. Shortly, there will be clarity in the United States. I have some extremely interesting concepts. I'd want to discuss a quite unusual document that was recently submitted in the case, in which Judge Netburn requests that the parties meet and resolve the remaining concerns near the finish. Of the film in this video, I'd want to address whether or not I believe there will be a settlement in this case. Please stay for it. I promise you won't be disappointed. As you may have heard, Gary Gensler is dissatisfied with the court's decision in the Ripple SEC case. He stutters frequently, and you can tell by how. How many mums does he include? In making this decision, he is looking for gains that he just cannot find. In essence, the SEC attempted to modify the law by alleging that the digital asset is a security in and of itself. This is one of the most important points to comprehend because, while the SEC has achieved a minor victory over Ripple's institutional sales, it is still a minor triumph. Finally, Ripple's operation does not need to sell XRP to institutions directly. Consider an example of a liquidity hub in which Ripple sells XRP to exchanges in the liquidity hub, and those exchanges subsequently distribute the cryptocurrency, such as in the case of Essence. Ripple is not selling XRP to anyone directly, which completely avoids SEC's triumph, was based on relatively little in terms of institutional sales. Furthermore, even if Ripple ever needed to register XRP for institutional transactions, it would be merely a formality. It is not claiming that XRP is the security, which is impossible. Ripple is simply alerting the SEC that it recently sent this sum of XRP to Bank of America, as indicated in our forum. As a result, the SEC did not win this game. They recently obtained a very small subset of transactions that Ripple is now expected to record, but may be able to avoid in the vast majority of future transactions. The fact that Gary Gensler did not receive any control over the secondary market is now his major problem moving forward, and he expresses disappointment that the judge said nothing about secondary transactions in this footage, even though Judge Torres stated that XRP is not a security as a matter of law. However, the biggest issue for Gary Gensler is that I am unable to go to the Second Circuit at this time. Moment and say that the regulation is erroneous. The security is XRP, and there has been no opinion there since the inception of Howey. Possession has never been considered a kind of security. If Gary Gensler wants to push this to the Second Circuit, he will have to follow other Ripple transactions rather than the asset itself. As a result, I feel this is a far bigger victory than most people understand since Judge Torres made it quite clear. It was obvious that the SEC had broken the law. Something she was not required to do, went out of her way to show the SEC that you are not using your writing style, and while you can question the way transactions are recorded, XRP will never serve as a security. The black swan occurrence was that most of us were worried that the conservatives would simply approve everything. The SEC stated, you know what it is, the SEC will enact new legislation for you. There was no security compromise. The sector's biggest challenge moving forward is precisely because some people are now questioning what will happen if the SEC files an appeal, and I believe this is a reasonable concern. Will XRP remain in limbo in the interim? And the answer is no, since the appeal system will take 2 to 3 weeks. Years to finish because Judge Torres' decision was the law at the time. If the SEC were to appeal the judge's decision, they would still be required to prove their case. The SEC is just dissatisfied with what happened, and the judge is correct for the time being. However, if the SEC disputes this verdict, it will be returned to total oblivion overnight. It suggests that, unless the SEC is proven incorrect, there is clarity, and, as I previously stated, the most important thing we need to understand about everything is that the SEC will find it incredibly difficult to retract its claim that XRP is a cryptocurrency. In the first example, we observed that this argument was already questionable. However, they were only able to prosper because they concealed it, somewhat in their other explanations. However, as we saw in the case, Judge Torres highlighted this problem and chastised the SEC for it since, even though any interpretation of the Howey test shows that that assessment is inaccurate on its face, the SEC will not publicly acknowledge in an appeal that it believes XRP is the security. The biggest issue with the second in this situation is that there isn't much to appeal to. They would simply be seeking to convert more Ripple transactions to XRP, which is incredibly risky. Whether or not this will be advantageous in the long run for them, it genuinely depends on how many resources the SEC is willing to invest in a case in which they are already losing. But although Gary Gensler seems to suggest in the video that it is merely one judge's opinion, I believe the SEC has a much better chance of actually succeeding on the exchange front. As a result, the SEC may simply try to appeal this out of spite, but I'm not sure where it will lead them in the long term. Now, I believe that the SEC would be considerably better served to settle the action and reap some advantages from a settlement, as we saw earlier today when Judge Torres delivered a paper demanding that the parties meet and select 3 dates to negotiate a settlement. It's important to remember that the parties don't have to meet on 3 separate occasions to discuss a settlement. They can decide whether they want to or not, but what is certain is that both parties are motivated to resolve this dispute. Ripple wants this to be over. That much is obvious. We now know that XRP is not a security. They're attempting to figure things out. How we can do business in the US. What do you want us to sign up for? What do we not need to register for, and how can we proceed legally? On the opposite side of this, the SEC recently suffered a devastating setback. Consider Gary Gensler's delivery. He seemed to be lacking confidence in that video. He used to come out and say that every one of these assets was security. Because of Judge Torres' harsh condemnation of the SEC, he can no longer make that argument. The SEC must win badly in this position. They gained a minor triumph, but they continue to strive for larger success. They can benefit from this settlement by having more XRP registered with Ripple, and as I previously stated, as previously indicated, this does not suggest that there is a critical security Ripple. The SEC may become engaged in these deals, which is a difficult idea to grasp. In my opinion, Ripple may still register XRP for various sales. Represents the Secretary's best chance to. In this situation, almost the entire Bitcoin. When the SEC first claimed, "Oh, we are thrilled with the judge's decision in this case, considering how much they had lost," the world laughed in their faces. Nobody believed it, but if the SEC is successful in reaching a favorable settlement, they may be able to publicly announce, "Hey, we won on this front, and this front." To be honest, we never imagined that XRP would become a security. We were merely using it to our advantage. All we wanted was for Ripple to log these sales so that the SEC could claim victory, which would be enormous for them and save a lot of money. There are a lot of new faces in the Oregon station right now. I believe that most of what I mentioned is likely the right course of action for the SEC. They would look their best, they would leave with the impression that they had genuinely provided clarity to this industry, and they would have reached the correct legal conclusion as a result of the entire procedure. However, as we have seen, the SEC has rarely followed common sense in recent months, instead preferring to take actions that merely condemn the sector, and they enjoy attempting to punish average investors. So perhaps the position I just described is a touch too sensible in any event. I find the scenario we're in right now pretty intriguing. On the key point, Ripple one-upped the SEC by asking for information from Ripple before delivering any XRP to an institution. Even though XRP is not a security, which is not what the SEC is looking for, and there isn't much opportunity for the SEC to appeal the key issue for the security they are looking for, the SEC will have to make a difficult decision moving forward. Do they collaborate with Ripple to solve the problem? How should this verdict be portrayed as a victory? Perhaps more Ripple sales should be recorded, and admit that XRP is not a security. Or do they appeal and create an even bigger mess? It doesn't matter. Based on what I've seen, the SEC will still challenge this, even if they appeal to the Supreme Court. No judge will accept the absurd. The SEC claims that XRP is a security, so you just need to pause and consider what the SEC is truly appealing now. And I just want to note that if Judge Torres hadn't truly decided that XRP wasn't a security and expressly stated that, in her opinion, the SEC may have had a realistic shot to smuggle that into the appeal, but because she was so emphatic and explicit that it will be impossible for another judge to assert that this was also highlighted by John D. Jeremy Hoban, which is why Judge Torres was such a lucky find for us in terms of XRP. Since its inception, XRP has been characterized as secure. Ripple has stated that the problem will be rectified and that it will register any documents requested by the SEC as long as they expressly clarify that XRP is not a security. The most important thing to understand is that XRP will never be security, regardless of what happens in the future, whether there are appeals or a settlement. Therefore, XRP holders will always be successful in the long run, even if we have to endure some more BS. Or perhaps the SEC will finally wake up. We should all be overjoyed if we can figure out how to make this area grow. Torres judged us because she removed the black swan from the equation. Even though she was not compelled to do so, she went out of her way to guarantee that the SEC could not forward this ludicrous argument. In all honesty, the SEC never even asked her to make a judgment on anything. She handled everything on her own. Because she realized there should never be a situation where XRP is used as security, the SEC and the Ripple effect, we may disagree on which sales Ripple should file, but that is a discussion for another day. For the time being, they can assemble and discuss it, or they can leave a second circuit, but because the SEC wants to have control over a sector, we won't be reinventing the law. I hope you had a good time. Please remember to like and subscribe if you liked this update. It truly means a lot.